I had been at Devotech for 10 years. 10 years. An entire decade shaping not only my future, but, silently, the future of the company itself. When I joined Devotech, I was just a promising engineer, full of ideas too big for my small role. Raleigh, North Carolina, was different back then. Rougher, more alive, just like me. And inside those gray concrete walls and eternally dirty windows of the old headquarters, something unexpected happened. I created something revolutionary. It was one random early morning with cold coffee and eyes burning from staring at the computer that the idea took shape. A hybrid processing architecture that would forever change the performance of our devices. I knew it was special, and I also knew that in companies like that, brilliant ideas became someone else's property in the blink of an eye. The former CEO, Richard Halverson, was an old school man. He trusted handshakes, words exchanged behind closed doors. At that time, after showing him what I had developed, we had a brief conversation, but one that would change my life forever. I remember it like it was yesterday. We were in his old office, the windows open, letting the warm summer breeze in. He scratched his graying beard thoughtfully while going over my notes. "Candace, this will transform our product line," he said with a proud smile. "That's why I want to protect it the right way," I replied. "Do you trust me?" "I do." He leaned forward and said, "Then register this patent in your name, officially. That way, if something happens in the future, you'll be safe. You created this. It's your right." Those words were like music to my ears. And that's exactly what I did. I registered the patent in my personal name away from the company's records. At first, it seemed like an exaggerated move. An invisible insurance that, over time, I almost forgot existed. Life went on. My position rose. My prestige did too. At Devotech, I was more than an employee. I was almost an internal legend. "Candace fixes it," they'd say. "Leave it to Candace." It was comfortable. It was predictable. It was safe. Until the day Nathan Cole walked through the doors of Devotech. I remember that morning perfectly. The sky was covered with heavy clouds, as if the universe itself was trying to warn us. Everyone was called to the auditorium, a large, impersonal space, smelling of damp carpet and burnt coffee. When Nathan stepped onto the stage, my stomach twisted. He was young, too young for that position, and seemed to exude a cold, almost mechanical energy. A slim suit, an expensive watch, a thin smile, devoid of warmth, and eyes. Eyes that saw no people, only numbers, cost lines, cuts. He calmly adjusted the microphone and spoke, his voice soft, almost seductive. "Good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to thank you for the incredible work you've been doing. You've built Devotech into something great, and that's exactly why I'm here, to ensure it continues to grow the right way." There was a brief pause, some timid applause. I looked around. I saw familiar faces, years of colleagues, friends, all equally tense. Nathan then continued, each word chosen like a sharp blade. "Our market has changed. Technology demands agility. We need to optimize processes, reduce bureaucracy, and yes, make some painful adjustments. It's necessary. It's vital." Optimizing, adjusting. Beautiful words to mask the obvious. Cuts, layoffs, blood on the floor. Panic was instant. I saw arms crossing. Nervous murmurs echoed through the auditorium. My heart raced. My hands sweated. I wanted to believe my position was secure. I wanted to believe that my years of contribution protected me. But something about that man, about that controlled smile, told me otherwise. To Nathan Cole, no one was indispensable. Not even me. He concluded his speech looking directly at us, almost like a predator analyzing the herd. "Those who survive this phase will be part of something new, better, stronger." Cold applause followed. I remained still, feeling in my chest a weight growing, like dark clouds announcing an imminent storm. And it was right there, in that moment, that a forgotten memory flashed in my mind like lightning. The patent. My patent. My invisible trump card, dormant, patiently waiting at the bottom of the board. For a moment, fear gave way to something different, a spark, an instinct. I still had a card up my sleeve, and not even Nathan, with all his arrogance and thirst for power, knew that. But in that moment, surrounded by anxious glances and poisoned words like optimization, all I could do was wait and observe, because something told me that the worst was yet to come. Little did I know it wouldn't just be my job that was at risk. It would be much more than that. The following weeks were like watching a castle crumble, stone by stone, with no one able to do anything to stop it. Every day, the atmosphere at Devotech grew heavier, almost solid. The familiar smell of burnt coffee and freshly printed paper was slowly replaced by the sour odor of fear. Each corridor seemed emptier than the last. Each habitual laugh evaporated before it even echoed. It was as if an invisible virus had taken hold among us, and its name was Nathan Cole. He walked through the company like an unsatisfied king pacing the hall before the execution of his subjects. Entire department heads were dismissed with the ease of someone blowing out candles on a birthday cake. A cold breath, a click of a pen, and there it was. Another empty office. I watched people I admired, people who had helped build Devotech from nothing, leave with boxes in their hands, family photos balanced atop old laptops, eyes empty, as if they didn't even know where they were. I saw Marjorie from the product department, 32 years at the company, leave in silence, her jaw clenched to keep from crying. I saw Raj Patel, who had trained generations of engineers, sitting in the parking lot for almost an hour, staring into nothingness before starting his car. It was cruel. And fast. It was as if the history of Devotech was being torn out, page by page, with no respect, no goodbyes. And I tried to stay invisible. I arrived early, left late, worked in my cubicle, quiet, like a ghost. I didn't ask questions. I didn't make comments. I didn't stand out in any way. If I crossed paths with Nathan in the hallways, I lowered my head, pretending to be focused on some urgent task on my phone. My hope was that, being small enough, I could escape the sharp blade he wielded so eagerly. But one day, inevitably, it was my turn. It was a gray Tuesday. I was finishing up reviewing the integration code for the new chipset, buried up to my neck in calculations, when I heard footsteps approaching. I looked up, and there he was. Nathan Cole, immaculate as always, with that smile of someone who already knows the outcome before the conversation even starts. "Candace Atkins?" he asked, as if confirming the name of an item on a shopping list. "Yes, sir," I replied, trying to sound calm while my heart pounded like an out-of-control drum. He gave a half smile and tilted his head slightly, curious. "You work in hardware development, right?" "Right," I confirmed, lifting my chin subtly, trying to find any trace of humanity in his expression. Nathan crossed his arms, studying me like a jeweler examines an imperfect stone. "How long have you been at Devotech?" he asked, with an intonation too casual to be just curiosity. I swallowed hard. 10 years, I answered, forcing a polite smile. He nodded, as if digesting the information, and then casually let slip, almost playfully. 10 years. That's too long to get used to things, isn't it? I froze. Those words fell on me like a stone in my stomach. Too long. Too long to get comfortable. Too long to be part of what he considered obsolete. Too long to deserve the renewal he preached so fervently. I smiled, a hollow automatic gesture, and nodded. But inside, my blood was boiling. It was clear. Nathan Cole didn't see me as a resource. He didn't see me as an asset. He saw me as dead weight. The meeting lasted only 5 minutes, but it left scars that would burn for a long time. As I left the meeting room, the cold light of the hallways seemed even more raw, more merciless. My stomach twisted with the chilling feeling that my time was running out. And deep down, a voice whispered, "Prepare yourself." As I walked back to my cubicle, trying to catch my breath, I crossed silent glances with other colleagues, those few who were still left. Glances that said, "You're next." I sat down, pretended to resume my work, but my mind was elsewhere. For the first time in a long while, I actually thought about the patent. That piece of paper that years ago seemed like a mere formality but now pulsed in my memory like a beacon in the storm. If Nathan fired me, what would happen to the technology? The answer was simple and terrifying. He would lose. Everything. And he didn't even know it. While staring at my computer screen, a notification popped up, a meeting invitation. Just his name as the host. Just me as the guest. My heart sank. It's now, I murmured to myself. I adjusted my hair with trembling hands and tried to mentally rehearse what I would say, how to seem calm, how to protect my final trump card without raising suspicion. But one thing was certain. Nathan Cole thought he was in control. He thought that by cutting one more head, he would make Devotech more efficient, more lean. What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that by cutting the next head, he would be sawing off the very branch he was sitting on. And me? I would be the saw. It didn't take long. In fact, it was almost predictable. Friday, 4:59 p.m., as the entire office seemed quieter than usual, I received the email, urgent meeting, room 4A. Dry subject, no explanations, no time for questions. The old coward's play, end of the workday, end of the week, to ensure any explosive reactions would dissipate in the cold silence of the weekend. I walked to the glass room with slow steps, each tap of my heels echoing through the empty hallway like a war drum. I knew. Every cell in my body knew. When I opened the door, the scene seemed already rehearsed. The HR director, Peter Langston, sat with rigid posture, pale as a ghost. His hands trembled slightly as he organized some papers on the table, trying to appear busy, important. Nathan Cole stood beside him. Impeccable. Impassive. His hands crossed in front of his body like a judge about to deliver a sentence he had already written. The silence stretched like a rope pulled to its limit. Then, Cole broke the tension, speaking in a soft voice. The tone of false compassion so rehearsed it made me nauseous. Candace, before anything else, I want to deeply thank you for your contribution to Devotech. He paused briefly, watching me like someone assessing the reaction of an animal about to be released into the wild. But with all due respect to your years of service, we've decided to go in another direction. For a second, I stood still. My eyes alternated between Cole, who seemed as satisfied as a fat cat, and Langston, who didn't dare to meet my gaze. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the wall clock marking each second like a rhythmic stabbing. I took a deep breath. Let the air fill my lungs as if every molecule was armor. I understand, I replied, keeping my voice steady as though that moment couldn't break me. But what I felt inside was something else. It was an ancient, rooted fury that vibrated in every inch of my being. A sadness that carried the weight of 10 years of wasted loyalty. 10 years of sleepless nights, sacrificed holidays, sweat spilled between those corridors. And deep down, there was something else. Something new. A flame. It wasn't defeat. It wasn't resignation. It was something fierce. Wild. Cole slid a white envelope toward me, my termination letter. Langston pushed the severance papers toward me, his voice faltering as he tried to sound procedural. We need you to sign, just to formalize. I picked up the pen. My hands were steady, cold as ice. I read every word with studied calm, letting them sweat in their seats. Each second was a slow torture for them, and I intended to savor every moment. I signed my name at the bottom of the page, Candace Akins, a signature they would soon learn to fear. I handed over my badge, a gesture that was supposed to symbolize the loss of my identity within those walls. But not for me. For me, it was like leaving an old coat behind before crossing into a new storm. Without another word, I stood up. Cole forced a smile, as if he wanted to give a civilized air to the slaughter he was conducting. We wish you success in your future endeavors, he said, in a pathetic attempt to sound magnanimous. I smiled. For the first time in weeks, a genuine smile. Thank you, Nathan, I replied. Really? You've given me exactly what I needed. He blinked, confused. Langston shot me a nervous glance, as if he feared he had forgotten something in the contract. But I was already turning my back, walking with firm steps toward the exit. I crossed the empty floor. Every vacant desk was a reminder of what he had destroyed. Every unoccupied chair, a promise that what was to come would be just and brutal. I pushed open the glass door and stepped out into the parking lot. The cold, rally afternoon air wrapped around me like a liberating embrace. I breathed deeply, filling my lungs with freedom. For a moment, I stood there, staring at the sky tinged orange by the sunset. My reflection in the dark windows of Devotech stared back at me, a woman they thought they had defeated, a woman who carried a card up her sleeve so powerful it could change everything. I wrapped my arms around my body, feeling the wind slip through my hair. And then I laughed, a short, free laugh filled with something new, hope mixed with cold revenge. Because now I had something no one could take from me, my freedom. And even more importantly, the most powerful card was still with me. The deal made years ago, the forgotten signature in some random notary office, the patent that was mine, only mine. The entire structure of Devotech rested on that invention. And now without me, without my permission, they were vulnerable. I could destroy Devotech with a single move, or shape it into something much greater. The choice was mine. And I didn't intend to be merciful. What I did next would not only change my fate, but it would rewrite Devotech's future forever. And Nathan Cole still had no idea the storm that was about to crash down on him. The weeks that followed were like watching a giant stumbling in slow motion. Rumors began to reach me like distant echoes, whispered in discreet messages, in quick encounters with former coworkers. Have you heard? The hardware department stopped. The updates? A complete disaster. Customers are threatening to cancel contracts. With each new whisper, I felt that flame inside me grow, feeding on the silent chaos that was beginning to consume Devotech from within. They thought they could simply rip out deep roots and move on as if nothing had happened. But ripped out roots leave holes, and holes sink castles. Then, on a warm Wednesday afternoon, while I was reviewing some documents in my new office, improvised but mine, the phone vibrated. Unknown number. For a moment, my heart raced. A part of me knew that this moment would come. I answered without thinking. Candace? The voice on the other end sounded tense, forced into an artificial cordiality. This is Nathan Cole. We need to talk. Ah, the sweet sound of barely concealed desperation. I let the silence stretch, allowing him to wallow in his own discomfort. I could almost hear his heavy breathing on the other side, the anxiety growing like a snowball. Finally, I broke the silence, my voice low, velvety, as sweet as freshly distilled poison. Trouble, Mr. Cole? There was a pause, small, but revealing. We've had some setbacks. Nothing we can't resolve, of course, he began, trying to sound confident. We'd like to discuss the possibility of your collaboration. Maybe reassess your position with us, or, if you prefer, talk about the rights to the technology you developed. There it was. The moment I had been waiting for. He wanted to renegotiate. He wanted me to come back, or at least give up what was mine. He thought he could simply throw some bills on the table and buy back the security he destroyed. I sat on the edge of my chair as if drawing closer to a campfire for warmth. And that's when I dropped the bomb, each word spoken with surgical precision. You didn't know, did you? The patent for the technology that supports your main product, it's mine. The silence that followed was sublime. I could feel his brain working, racing, trying to find a gap, a justification, an escape. This is impossible, he stammered, his composure slipping through his fingers like fine sand. Consult your legal team, I replied, each word as sharp as a polished blade. I suggest you do it quickly, and good luck with the lawsuit for infringement that I'm filing on Monday. There was a muffled noise on the other end, like he had knocked something off the table. A whispered curse, a dry thud. But I had already decided. Before he could react, I said the final word. Have a great weekend, Mr. Cole. And I hung up. For a moment, I stood there, staring at the still warm phone in my hand. My hands were trembling. Yes, but not from fear. It was pure adrenaline, vibrating through every nerve, a raw euphoria that only comes when you challenge the impossible and win. I got up from the chair. I crossed the small makeshift office and opened the window, letting the fresh air flood the room. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. For the first time in years, I was not a piece in someone else's game. I was the strategist. And now it was he who fought at a disadvantage. It wasn't just the hardware department paralyzed. It wasn't just the furious customers, it was the entire foundation of Devotech starting to crack, right beneath Nathan Cole's feet. And me? I was the fuse, I was the spark, I was the storm about to explode over his head. And that phone call was just the first move. The war was officially declared, and I still had far more devastating cards to play. The news spread faster than I could ever imagine. It was like fire on dry ground, licking everything in its path, impossible to contain. At first, it was just whispers in the corporate circuit of Raleigh. Devotech lost a vital patent. Legal troubles ahead. But soon the local press caught the scent of blood. Headlines appeared like a summer storm, fast and devastating. CEO implements mass layoffs and loses critical technology to ex-employee. Strategic mistake sends Devotech into freefall. 10 years of loyalty ignored. The story of Candace Atkins and her masterful turnaround. Each new article felt like a small act of vengeance, inked for the world to see. I found myself reading the articles with a clinical calm, as if watching from a distance a bridge collapse after repeatedly warning about the cracks in its foundations. Inside Devotech, chaos became routine. The company's stock, already staggering after a series of mistakes, began to plummet steeply. Longtime investors started jumping off the ship like rats fleeing a sinking vessel. In less than 3 months, the board called an urgent meeting. The walls of the glass-walled conference room, which once served to display strength and transparency, now exposed only tense, desperate faces. Nathan Cole, the great architect of the restructuring, the man with the cold smile and unchecked ambition, was called into a private meeting. Hours later, the news leaked. Did you hear? Cole was fired. No honor, no severance package. Irony of ironies. Brought down by the very ruthless cuts he had so eagerly celebrated. It was as if fate had written a small play, and I had been both the screenwriter and the leading lady. But life still had more in store. While Devotech floundered in its own traps, I was already moving in silence, behind the scenes. One afternoon, while reviewing the terms of a new contract, my phone vibrated. It was a simple text message from an unknown number, but one that carried a powerful name. Interested in discussing partnership possibilities? Orion Technologies. Orion. One of Devotech's fiercest competitors. A name that sent chills down the spine of any technology meeting room in Raleigh. I smiled. I scheduled a meeting for the following week. The Orion building was an imposing structure of glass and steel, reflecting the sky as if it were above earthly problems. When I entered the conference room, I found 3 executives waiting for me, 2 men and 1 woman, all with sharp eyes like blades. The oldest among them, a man with graying hair and a firm expression, stood to shake my hand. "Candace Atkins," he said with a note of respect in his voice. "I heard you're the woman who took down the King of Raleigh." "I just defended what was mine," I replied with a slight smile. The woman next to him, wearing a navy blazer and sharp eyes, leaned forward. "Defending is one thing. Turning the game around? That's an art." We talked for hours. They didn't just want my technology. They wanted the story that came with it. They wanted the symbol of the turnaround, the trophy of victory over corporate arrogance. I negotiated calmly, knowing that for the first time in a long while, all the cards were in my hand. By the end of the afternoon, I signed a multi-million-dollar licensing contract. Not only did it preserve my technology, but it also guaranteed me hefty royalties for years to come. And most importantly, I would choose the projects I worked on. Freedom, finally, true freedom. That night, Raleigh felt different. The city lights shone like constellations too close. The air was warm, heavy with promises. I sat on a small restaurant terrace in the city center, a glass of chilled white wine in my hands. The golden liquid reflected the distant lights, sparkling like a small private universe. I watched people walking down the streets, hurrying, laughing, living, and for a moment, I closed my eyes. I felt the warmth of the glass against my fingers. I heard the hum of the city mixing with the soft music coming from the speakers. And I thought, the best part of playing with hidden cards is knowing when to show them. Nathan Cole never saw my move coming. He never thought the woman sitting quietly in the corner of the room, working in silence, could be the architect of his ruin. But now, the game was mine. And in that moment, on that terrace, beneath the starry sky of Raleigh, I was invincible. But power, true power, is like a river. It needs to be controlled, or it swallows its own master. And soon I would learn that winning a war is only the beginning of a new, greater challenge.